Gary was born sometime in the early 80s, but the exact circumstances of his birth are unclear. He was abandoned as a baby in the hollow of a tree in the Daniel Boone National Forest and found by a company of lumberjacks who took him in and raised him as their own. Ever the precocious scamp, Gary soon became too much even for the stalwart and long-suffering lumberjacks to handle, so they traded the 4-year-old to a traveling salesman for a Husqvarna 266 XP 4.5 horsepower chainsaw and a quart of Castrol 2-stroke oil. Gary spent the remainder of the Reagan years being traded for various goods and services, slowly depreciating in value from a chainsaw and a quart of oil to a 1972 Ford Pinto that was mostly rust, to a used crankcase cover for a 1984 Chevy El Camino, and finally to cover the loss of a $25 Super Bowl bet, seeing as the Redskins had beat the spread that year. He was eventually abandoned in the notion section of a Sears and Roebuck in Lexington, Kentucky. Gary lived in that department store for 6 months, subsisting on free samples from the food court and evading department store security guards by pretending to be a mannequin. Growing tired of this lifestyle, he adopted a passing family, easily forcing his will upon them and manipulating them to do whatever he pleased. His influence grew quickly throughout his community, and by the summer of 1994, he was the leader of one of the fastest-growing suicide cults in North America, an achievement of which any 12-year-old would be proud. After a lengthy and well-televised court case against the U.S. federal government, Gary avoided all criminal charges, but the preceding civil case left him bankrupt. With the help of wealthy backers, Gary purchased an island off the Caribbean, which he called Totally Awesome Island, so celebrities, aristocrats, and the rich could hunt poor people for sport. It wasn't long before he was tried at The Hague for his crimes against humanity. He wasn't eligible for the death penalty due to his age, so an international tribunal sentenced him to solitary confinement in a blacklisted site somewhere in Eastern Europe until he was at such an age where they could execute him without feeling too bad about it. However, due to a catastrophic Y2K era, his cell was unlocked and he escaped, eventually making his way back to the States. With nothing else better to do, Gary enlisted in the Army as an in-flight missile repair technician. Scoring some of the highest marks in his MOS, he was quickly promoted to Sergeant Major of the Army, planning and personally leading some of the most brilliant tactical failures in the history of warfare. Again, he was tried at The Hague for his crimes against humanity. Learning well from his first experience, Gary had all members of the convicting tribunal assassinated and intimidated or assassinated all others in the international community who were in a position to threaten him. Having secured his safety for the foreseeable future, Gary has decided to get back to his lumberjacking roots and become the woodworker he's always wanted to be. He spends most of his shop time making pipes, but eventually he'd like to get into making live edge furniture. I am Morgan Freeman.